Hi everyone. So today I wanted to talk about like how do we actually stay grounded? It's easy for me to sit here and talk about, oh, you know what? I would never do this or I would never do this because you know that something is wrong or something is bad, or the outcome is not going to be good. So you say you won't want to do it, right? You don't want to do something like that. So it's easy for me to sit here and say, you know what? I would never do a thing like that, or you never see me do something like this or do something like that. But then yet we hear about a lot of people around us that might have slipped and messed up in that area, right? And it's easy for us to stand by and look at them and think, but why would they do this or why would they do that? Don't they know that this is wrong, or the pain that they now have to face? They did not think about it before. But what I've learned, right? And I've made a video before talking about God's protection to us, and how sometimes it feels as if, like we're being kept away from something that's good, like as a sacrifice we're making and all that, right? But what I've learned is that it's easy for me to sit back and say, I'm not gonna do this or I'm not gonna do that because of the consequences that I see, that it can have, right? But what happens when I find myself in a situation where this thing looks good, it feels good, and even though I know that it's wrong, or it's not gonna bring any good fruit, it's still hard for me to walk away from it. I've been experiencing that lately whereby, there's something whereby it at the moment it looks good and it feels good, but to myself, like, I know that it's wrong. But even though I know that it's wrong and I don't want to go there, it's still hard for me to walk away from it, and it's like I question myself, like, why do I desire this thing so much, or why do I feel like a pull towards this thing even though I know that this thing bears no good fruit, or this thing, it's not good for me, right? And it's really a struggle, right? And it's so easy for me to sit back and say, I'm not gonna do it. But when I'm faced with it, when I'm actually faced with it, like it's there in front of my face, like, how do I walk away from it? Kind of thing about it is that sin is something sweet, meaning that it feels good, it looks good. If it didn't, it wouldn't be so hard for us to, do the right thing or walk away from it. I wouldn't have so many people that slip and fall, right? They slip and they fall because it was hard for them. It is, and it looks good and it feels good at the moment. And you see a lot of people that slip, it's not that they didn't know that it was wrong, but it's when you actually face with it, it's a tough thing, and it's easy for a lot of us to stand back and look at them and say, no, they didn't know this, or they didn't know that. How could they allow themselves to get so far and to get there, right? But from what I've experienced, it's hard, and it's like you can make it, yeah, you can walk away from it, and so, but it's really hard. And I understand why a lot of people sleep. I'm not saying that it's good or it's right or whatever. I'm just saying that I understand why people would slip up and make this mistake or fall into these situations, right? But what I've learned too is that when these situations come, the best thing to do is not to focus on how good it feels or how good it looks. Because when you focus on that, it kind of you're kind of strengthening that pull that's pulling you towards it, because it's like, say, oh my gosh, this thing, so this, you start to magnify how great it can be, and that's what you're seeing in front of your face, how good it can be, and then that makes it harder for you to walk away. So what I've learned is if I don't focus on how good it is, but I think about, maybe, the consequences of it, like, what do I really want? Do I really want this one moment of, of how good this thing feel, and then the rest of my life I gotta deal with the consequences of it? Or I focus on, there's better out there, or what, if I, stay firm and not give in to this right now, that God has something better, and start to magnify the better that God has for me, start talking about it, start thinking about, oh wow, what, God has this and God has that, and start comparing it. Because when you compare what God has for you, and you can let your imagination go wild, compare what God has for you to that one moment, it's like a big, like, okay, that's the size of my hand here, to a big, this is what God has. And do you really want to give up this for this, like this little whatever, moment? Because this is just for a moment, but what God has for you is going to last, because it's the right thing, first of all, and it's good, and his blessing is on it, right? So it's like, just magnify the things that are good, the things that are to come. You know what? If I stay strong and I don't give into this moment here, there's so much that God has for me, and you talk yourself into it. You talk yourself into it, and you try to not focus on how good this thing might seem, at this moment, because think about it. Most times it's just for a moment, and after that moment you got to deal with whatever guilt, with whatever consequences that come with that. So my encouragement to you is, whenever you find yourself in a situation where this thing in front of you that looks so good, that feels so good, but to yourself that this is not right, or this is not going to bear any good fruit. And I know it's hard to walk away from it. If it wasn't, then it wouldn't have been so tempting. A lot of people wouldn't have fallen to it, right? So the main fact that it's so tempting, don't think about how good it is at that moment. Think about the consequences after. Think about what you'll be missing out on if you only go here. Like, you want what God has for you, right? You know that what He has is exceedingly and abundantly above anything that you could think or ask. Like, tell yourself things like this, to encourage yourself. Like, blow up the good that God has for you, and not focus on how sweet this thing is, because it is sweet. Let's not pretend, or make it look as if I don't even know what you're talking about. At the moment, it is sweet, but later on, it has its consequences. So I hope that gives you an encouragement or strength to walk away from something that is not going to add good fruit to your life. And the next thing I wanted to talk about is about God's grace, and God's grace to us. And I've learned and I've experienced God's grace to me. And the thing about it is that I've been hearing about God's grace since I was small. You're in church, you hear about God's grace, you would talk about it, it's like something casual. But I've experienced it, and it's like experiencing it has helped me to appreciate it and to understand it even more. Because when I mess up, I see God, still come through for me. He still, He doesn't cancel His plans for my life. Like, oh, do you want to have all this in store for you? And then, whoops, I mess up. And He's like, what? Girl, you can forget about everything that I ever had for you. No, God doesn't do that. Like, look at Peter. God knew Peter would deny Him 3 times. But God still said that He was going to build His church. Use Peter to build His church. And it's like that. His falling did not prevent God from fulfilling the plan that He had for Peter's life. But Peter had to decide to forgive himself and let go of that in order for God to be able to use him. Because if he had hold on to that, then he would have had that as a weight keeping him back from doing what God wanted him to do. God had forgiven him. God knew about it, and God still had the plans for him. God had forgiven him. He had to forgive himself. Otherwise, he would have been of no use to God, and the plans that God has for his life would not come to pass because he chose to hold on to the mistake that he had made. So I don't know. There are a lot of people out there that I feel that, they do things. Because when I mess up, and I'm sure people do worse than what I may have done. I'm not saying that I'm better than anybody. I'm just saying that there may be people out there that do maybe worse than what I do, because sometimes it might be a little thing and I feel so guilty about it. But I've learned that, what, God doesn't want me to stay in this one moment and to just focus on the wrong that I've done. He has forgiven me. It's time for me to learn from this situation, pick myself up, brush myself off, and move on, to fulfill what God has to me. And there's a lesson to learn in everything. I don't think any experience in my life has been wasted. I think that I learned something from it that helps me to move on. It helps me to understand God more. Because if I didn't mess up and need God's grace, then I wouldn't have been able to understand it the way that I do as experiencing it. Because hearing about God's grace is one thing, but experiencing it is another thing. So I thank God. I mean, I'm not saying that, okay, go and mess up because God has a whole bunch of grace for you. Like, you willfully mess up. There are times when we want to do well, but we slip, we can't help ourselves. And God knows, He knows we're going to mess up before we even mess up, like how He told Peter that He was going to deny Him, and Peter was like, God, me? Like, I would never do that. Well, maybe this is not his exact words, but, to him, he was like, I would never do that to you. Why would I want to deny you, like, why? But it's like we don't intentionally say, okay, wake up in the morning and plan and say, okay, I mess up here, I mess up there, I mess up here. No, but it happens, and He knows it's gonna happen. That's why He has grace in place. If we didn't mess up, we wouldn't need grace, right? So God has given us this gift of grace You know, meaning that we mess up, but there's not, all hope is not lost. There's still hope for you. So whoever you are, whatever you may have done that you feel that God has forgotten about you, no matter what it is, as long as you are willing to let go of that and to allow God to restore you, it's possible. The devil would have you to believe that, you know, you're done with, you've messed up, and there's no hope for you, because he wants you to stay where you are. He wants you to stay where you are, and for you not to go on to be that wonderful person that God created you to be and to achieve everything that he has in store for you. But I want to encourage you that God loves you, and he knew you would mess up before you even know you would do it. But he still has great things in store for you. It's up to you to let go of that hurt, let go of whatever that thing is that you may have done that you feel that, you know, would have, that's keeping you up, keeping you away. Ask God to help you, to forgive you, to help you to forgive you, to help you to let go of it and to move on. Learn whatever lesson needed to be learned from it and move on. And you can now use that story to help others. God has forgiven you. You know, he still has great things in store for you. Do you want to receive it, or do you want to stay where you are? God has lots of grace, and it's not saying that you should willfully go and misuse it or take advantage of it. But there are times when we mean well, but we still mess up. And God loves us so much that he has grace there waiting for us to say, okay, you know what? Brush yourself off, clean yourself up. He has a new coat for you. Put on a new coat and get back out there and move on. Make progress. And that's what, you know, like being a Christian is not being perfect. I think a lot of people think that, you know, when you're a Christian, you don't make a mistake, you're perfect and all that. And so they gotta wait until they reach this peak in their life when everything is all perfect before they give their life to Christ. No, being Christian is a process. It's a step. Because you give your life to Christ, and then there's a journey that you take to build your relationship with Christ, and you mature each day. And maturing involves going through situations where you learn and you grow. God don't expect you to come to him knowing everything and being this perfect person that doesn't need his help. You know, just know that I'm here with you. I'm growing too. I'm learning, and I'm happy to welcome you to the club. You know, to understand that, you know, God has lots of grace waiting there for you, and you should not give up on you, because God is not going to give up on you. So you shouldn't give up on you. If you give up on you, then you miss out on everything that God has in store for you. God has exceedingly and abundantly above we can think or ask. I keep telling myself that even though I expect God to do great things for me, when God actually does it, it's going to be amazing. I'm going to be in shock, even though I'm expecting great things. So I hope this was an encouragement to you. And if it was, feel free to share with somebody else so that it can encourage them to keep moving forward. Thank you for watching my video, and I see you in my next video. Bye.